I've broken the session down into 4 sections. So the first one that we're going to do is start by looking at optimizing your website. So what you could be doing now, if your website is in development, this is a really good time to be doing it. But if it isn't, and maybe you've got a bit of spare time on your hands, going back and revisiting your website content now is going to be great. So we're going to start by looking at optimizing your website, making sure you've got a really good base before you start promoting it. And then secondly, we're going to look at ways to drive more traffic to your website. I think that's the biggest challenge that clients come to us for, is trying to get more people, more eyes on their products and services. So we're going to look at some different ways on different platforms you could use to get traffic to your site. And then thirdly, we're going to look at how to re-engage potential customers. We find that a lot of traffic that comes to our website will leave without buying anything, and it's how we get those people back. We know that they've shown an interest, so it's getting them back to the website. And then lastly, we're going to look at re-engaging old customers. So one thing that businesses often neglect is trying to re-engage with people that have bought from us in the past, that are already on our database. And we tend to go after the new customer. And actually, it's quite often a lot cheaper to target people who have already bought from us before. So I'm going to keep stopping for questions. If I miss any, we'll stop at each section and we'll review each question as we go through. So we'll start off by looking at optimizing your website. So it's all about content. Content is king. You'll hear that on many of these sessions from the other presenters as well. It's all about the content on your site. And with e-commerce, it's almost even more so, because you're trying to get someone to hand over their credit card details to purchase something from you. So for them, they need as much information as possible. So the content on your website is key. So I want to focus a little bit around your product and service descriptions on your website. And it's an area that does get neglected. And we see quite a lot of e-commerce websites where the description will be maybe 1 or 2 sentences of the product. And it's really basic information which the user probably could have figured out for themselves. What they really want to do is describe the product in as much detail as possible, talk about all its features, all its benefits, how this is going to solve the consumer's problems, any FAQs about the product. So if you have a product that's quite complicated, quite difficult for people to understand, or maybe it's quite complex. So I've noticed as someone in IT, support and hardware, it's quite technical. So it's getting all that technical information in those product descriptions and making those product pages as rich as possible in content. So now is a really good time to be going back and looking through your site content and seeing whether there's any products on your site that you could maybe enhance a little bit more. Could you write another paragraph about how this product could be used? Could you add something like reviews on there, customer reviews, something like that? Or maybe you could do an internal review on a product and upload that to the product page as well. Just ideas to get more content on there. I put there the second bullet point down there, don't copy and paste manufacturer's description. How many people here are selling a product that they don't manufacture? So they're selling somebody else's product, which essentially there's hundreds of other competitors doing the same thing. Is there quite a few people doing that? Pop a Y in the chat box or yes. Yeah. So this is more kind of aimed at, this is more kind of aimed at you guys that are selling a product that essentially you've got lots of competitors selling the same thing. Quite often you'll have a manufacturer's description and it's just dead easy just to copy and paste that into your website. The problem with doing that is, I know sometimes you have to because the manufacturer will control it. What you want to do is, if that's the case, try and add your own content underneath. But ideally you'd want unique content on that product description page. If your description is the same as everybody else's, then there's nothing to differentiate you from anybody else. There's nothing to differentiate you from a user's perspective, but also from a Google perspective. So thinking about search engine optimization, if your content is identical to everybody else's, Google's unlikely to show yours over someone else. It will just pick the one that it thinks is the most relevant and will sort of discard any duplicates. So you really want to be thinking about getting your descriptions really unique. So on the same line as sort of content, your images in your video. So it's a really good time to be looking at your product images, and these might be manufacturer supplied, or they might be, if you've got your own products, which a few of you have, so you've got your own products that you sell, so you might do your own product photography or have someone that comes in and does the images for you. Making sure that they're as up to date as possible, so the current product models and things like that, so they're not showing old products in there. But also, what's the quality of the images like? Could you improve on that? Could you make that a little bit better? Could you enlarge them, so make the product images bigger when you click on them? Could you add more images, so from different angles of the product, keeping the user as informed as possible, so giving shots from different angles, doing little 360 views, things like that, and product videos as well. And I know with what's going on in the world at the moment, getting professional photographers could be a challenge. I have heard that a few photographers are still doing product photography. If you've got a small product that you can ship to the photographer, they will do the photography in their studio and then ship you the products back. So there's still some photographers working around the current situation, so it might be that you could revisit that. But product videos are a great way to educate people as to what the product does. You can talk through that with people. One study by HubSpot said that 72% of customers would rather learn about a product or service by way of a video than by anything else, and that people retain more information that way than they do from written text. So having a video on each page, so that may be something that you could look to do. I believe there is a video marketing workshop coming up, and I'm sorry, Aldous at the end will let us know the dates for that, but that could be a really useful one as well if you're thinking about doing that. So thinking about what your competitors are doing as well, look at their content on their website, and are they doing anything different to you? Have they got more information on their site compared to you? It could be a really good way of doing a bit of a competitive analysis and seeing what content they've got. Obviously, don't copy and paste their content. You want yours to be unique, but see what kinds of content they're using, particularly if you've got particular competitors that come up in Google search more than you, so they're coming up higher up and they're always sort of outranking you in Google. Look at what they're doing, because chances are they've probably got more content on their site. So start from MDG advertising. 67% of consumers say that the image is very important in selecting or purchasing a product online. And you've probably seen this yourself when you're purchasing something online. You are looking for a really nice product image, and it could be that it's just a really nice detailed image, some close-up images, but things like lifestyle shots, in use, so product in use kind of shots, so you can get a feel for the scale of a product and how it fits in to sort of its environment as such. So thinking about bigger shots, not just close-up product shots as well. So lots to think about, but images and content, key things to look for. And then reviewing other bits of website content. So some of the areas that we don't tend to look at very often on our sites are things like your kind of small print pages, so your privacy policies, your returns, delivery policies, contact details, delivery details. So making sure that these are up to date. It's really important, especially with what's going on at the moment in the world, that we keep our customers informed of what's going to happen and what their rights are in terms of returning products. Also delivery details, have these changed? So your delivery time's longer than what they were before. Let people know what courier you're using, just let people know as much information as possible. So you might not have looked at these since you set up your website, and that might have been several months or several years ago. So it's a really good idea to look back now and see whether they're up to date. Your privacy policy, for example, think back to GDPR, and did you update your privacy policy at that time? Is it still relevant? So making sure that you've got the most up-to-date data protection wording within your privacy policy is always a good idea. And if you're selling online, contact details. So making sure that you've got some form of contact that the consumer can then get in touch with you about it. It just helps reassure people that you're a real company, you're a real person there, and if something does go wrong, then they can potentially get in touch, so they're not out on their own. So Francesca asked, is this a B2B or B2C data? I'm not sure what you mean, Francesca. Are you sort of referring to the privacy policy, the data protection, that side of things? What was that? I don't know. So obviously I'm not here as a data protection expert by any means. You should, whether you're B2B or B2C, have a privacy policy on your website if you're collecting data of any form. So even if it's just a name and an email address. So I hope that's covered it, but happy to answer any questions about that to clarify. So just before we move on, I will just have a quick check, see if we've got any questions. Okay, the statute of cultural importance of images. So it's a mixture of both. So the stats come from HubSpot, who work with both B2B and B2C. So it will be a mixture of both, I would imagine. Great, and someone's having their products shots of the company there who are doing product shoots as well. So I'm just struggling to get my Q&A box back up. Let me just bear with me 1 second while I play about with this. Okay, Q&A. Okay, so no questions at the moment, that's great. So the next section that we're going to look at, we're going to move on to now driving traffic to your website. And I think this is probably one of the more common things that we get brought in to help with. And for me, it's a key of utilising as many relevant channels as possible. And I don't mean, I suppose that's kind of a bit deceptive, use as many channels as possible because you don't want to spread yourself too thin, but I think you do need to be on multiple platforms. So for example, we worked with a company briefly who were an online retailer of clothing. They had a bricks and mortar store as well, and they'd just taken over the store from somebody else, so they bought the business. So they were the new owners, and they brought us in to do their Google AdWords for them. So we took that over and we ran it for the first month, and I think it was 400% increase in sales, something ridiculous in the first month. We had huge successes with it. After a couple of weeks after that, during the second month, they decided to stop the Google ads. They said it wasn't working for them, that the sales were down, which was really odd because the sales, from our point of view, the sales were up, definitely up. We were really happy with how things were going. So we sat with them and we looked through their Google Analytics and looked at where they were driving traffic and sales from previously with the previous owner compared to where they were. And the previous owner had been doing Google ads at quite a low level, but they'd also been running Facebook campaigns, Instagram campaigns. They'd been doing email marketing 2-3 times a week. And the majority of their sales came through social and email, and Google ads was lower down because they weren't investing as much in it. So although we had replaced quite a lot of those sales with Google ads, it wasn't enough to replace all the other forms of marketing that the previous owner had been doing. And it just kind of highlights it's so important not to put all your eggs into one basket and try and generate all your traffic from one source. It's trying to have multiple sources, all driving traffic to your website. So social media is probably going to be one of the bigger ones that you're probably going to use. Facebook and Instagram, if you're B2C, we've got some B2B on the webinar today as well, but from a B2C perspective, Facebook and Instagram, it's not to say it wouldn't work for B2B, but it would pretty much guaranteed to work if you are B2C. So with Facebook and Instagram, it's not just a case of having a Facebook page and posting product pictures. You need to really get into Facebook. There's so many features for retailers on Facebook and Instagram, which a lot of businesses don't realize. So I really highly recommend that you set up a business manager account. So you go to business.facebook.com, and that will let you set up an account where you can manage not only your Facebook page, but also the users that have access to it, your advertising accounts. You can create product catalogs, a feed of your products from your website, where you can then create a Facebook shop. You can create an Instagram shop as well now. There's so much that you can do as a retailer through Facebook. It's really worthwhile having a look at the business manager account if you don't already have one. Facebook advertising is great because there's several different ways that you can target people. You can target by location, demographics, interests, pages that they like, topics that they're interested in. You can be really specific about who you're trying to get in front of. And you can also, we're going to look at sort of creating custom audiences in the next section. So I won't talk too much about that now, but there's lots of different ways of advertising through both and lots of different placements where your adverts can appear. So for those of you who don't know, I think most people know now, Facebook bought Instagram, so it's owned by Facebook. So anything that you do through your Facebook advertising can then go out onto Instagram at the same time. So you create a Facebook campaign and you have the option of where you want your advert to show in terms of different placements within the Facebook platform. So like the news feed, down the right hand side, in Messenger. And some of those options are in Instagram, in stories and things like that. So Facebook and Instagram are kind of one of the same, and you can target them both, or you can target them separately, but it's all done through Facebook, Facebook's ads manager, which you can access through the business manager account. So I highly recommend that. Highly recommend you get a business manager account if you haven't already. It's also good if you want to outsource your marketing at some point. So it means that you can then just grant access to people to different parts of your Facebook, whether it's your page, your ad account. It can all be done within there. And it's also where you can manage your Facebook pixel, which you may have heard people talk about. You may have this installed already. The pixel is basically some tracking code. Facebook gave it a name and called it a pixel. It's a piece of script that goes onto your website, and it then sends information back to Facebook to tell Facebook who's been on your website and how they've interacted with your site and whether they've made a sale or purchase. And this information can then be used by you to create advertising campaigns targeted to what people have done on your site. It also allows you to track sales, so you can see whether your campaigns are actually generating a return on your investment as well. So from a B2B point of view, to be completely honest, I didn't expect a huge amount of B2B people on the webinar today. So it's really interesting to see there's quite a few people who are actually selling online B2B. And I'd still say that it's worth looking at Facebook and Instagram, but be aware that it is more B2C. Excuse me. So you could look at something like LinkedIn. So would Pixel work with Shopify? Yes, definitely. Actually using a platform like Shopify makes a lot of what I'm talking about today easier because everything integrates with it. So there's extra Shopify plugins for things like Facebook and Facebook Pixel, Facebook Shop, and your catalog. Linking it to Google Analytics, which we're going to look at later. So Shopify is quite a good platform for doing that. So the next thing I want to look at is Google Shopping. Is anybody using Google Shopping at the moment? Sort of paid ads through Google. So they look like these in the screenshot here where you've got the product picture. Nope. So yeah, so one person is trying to find it hard. Yeah, I get that. Google Shopping is going to be using them. Great. Google Shopping, to me, if you've got an e-commerce website, you need to be using Google Shopping. It's just a no-brainer. If you're going to invest anything in advertising, Google Shopping is kind of where it's at, mainly because Google itself, you are targeting people who are actively searching for your product. So they're already in the market for it, they're already interested. So that kind of pre-qualifies them a little bit. And then the adverts that come up, so you'll see from the screenshot that we've got a picture of the product itself and you've got the price of the product. So it's giving people information before they click through. So again, it kind of pre-qualifies them. They know that that's the product that they want because they've seen a picture of it. And they know that that's the price they're prepared to pay because they've seen that before they click through. So if you compare it to sort of standard Google AdWords ads where you've got the text at the top of the Google search results and there's no image or anything with it. The problem with that is unless you say in that what the product price is, which you could do. There's no image of the product. So you could get people clicking through and then not purchasing because it's not the right product for them. And you're wasting your budget in that sense. So the Google Shopping it tends to pre-qualify people, which means that you then get to convert more traffic because it's being pre-qualified. So I've got a couple of questions, so I'm just going to start to answer. So is Google Shopping mainly for comparing products? Yes and no. So you can compare prices from different retailers. So you can, if you clicked on a product, if you go into the shopping tab, for example, so rather than looking at all search results, if you go into the shopping tab, you can click on a product and it will give you prices from different stores. So it does work like a comparison site. But they all click through to the retailer to then make the purchase. Google Shopping different to Google Shopping ads? No, it's exactly the same thing. Exactly the same. So I've just abbreviated it to Google Shopping. So it's all run through Google Ads. Yep, Google Shopping is going to be free. Thanks, James. You just spoiled my slide in a couple of slides' time, but yeah, Google Shopping will become free. So yeah, I saw some other ones pop up as well in the Q&A. Let's have a look. Do you think Instagram Catalog is a good option? I feel like Instagram is for building relationships with customers and interaction. Once you try to sell your product, will not sales go down? Yeah, it's a difficult one. Selling on social media is always a bit of a, some people would say that you perhaps shouldn't, and that social is more about being social and talking to your customers, and it definitely is. But people do buy quite a lot through Facebook and Instagram feed. So I would say that the Instagram catalog is kind of separate to your Instagram feed, if that makes sense. So it wouldn't kind of interfere with what you're doing. And most people, when they've looked at research into consumer behavior and why they follow particular brands on social media, they do so because they want to get good deals on products and services. So actually, it's not that bad an idea to sell. So I would say it's still a good option. Does Google Shopping work for services? No. I don't believe it does. It would depend if you can buy your service online. So they have to be able to transact the order online and make a purchase online for it to count, and you have to be able to upload a feed of all your products to Google. So it possibly wouldn't work for services. One thing to check would be to do a Google search for your service and then look on the shopping tab to see if anyone else is doing it. That would give you an answer. If you have a premium product, does it work as a price comparison? It does. I think Sam, you mean kind of in a negative way, perhaps. It can do. So if you're selling something online and yours is a luxury version and your competitors are coming up with a cheaper alternative, there is that sort of price comparison element. So if yours is particularly high value, it might be that yours looks more expensive than everybody else's and you don't get the click-throughs that you would want. The selling of digital services such as online courses would work with Google Shopping. Again, Colin, I'm not too sure about that. It's not something that I've tried, but you could. You would need. I'm not sure it would. I don't think it would, but I would do a search on Google and look at the shopping tab and see whether there's anybody else doing it. I would think it has to be a physical product because you have to put things like shipping information and the countries that you're selling to. I think it would need to be a physical product. So I assume it wouldn't work for services, so we've kind of covered that. Art prints hard to compare, yeah. Advantage of Shopify generates markup. Yeah, okay. Some good advice in there. Yeah, so some of the questions are not showing up in the chat. So it could be that they, I think most of the questions now are coming through to everyone in the chat, but then they're in the Q&A bubble as well. So the Q&A, I think, is at the bottom of your screen. There's some questions in there. So I will just mark these as answered. So which channel would you use to sell an app? That's a good question, actually. So what you can do, you can advertise through Google, but potentially as an app ad. So you actually advertise within other people's apps. And you can advertise so that when they click on the ad, it goes through to the App Store to download and install it. So that there are app-specific ads you can run through Google Ads. So that would potentially be the one that I would look at, Helen, for that. But also, I suppose it depends what the app is as well and who your audience is. So if you've got an app that's for business owners, it might be that you use a bit of LinkedIn advertising. If you've got an app that's more for consumers, advertising it through Facebook and Instagram would work as well. Okay, hope that answers that. Okay, can you advertise on the App Store? I believe so. You can advertise your, I'm not actually sure what you mean by that on the actual App Store itself. Obviously, if you've got an app, it would be on the App Store. I'm not sure how advertising in that sense works. You can advertise on Google's display network. You can advertise apps on Google's display network. So it takes people through to the App Store to purchase it and download it. So I hope that kind of answers that. So just a quick run through on how Google Shopping actually works. For those that are not using it and are interested in using it, we've got 3 parts to Google Shopping ads. So we've got your website to start with. So this is where all your products and services are. And from there, we create what's called an XML feed. So we're going to get a bit technical now. But the XML feed is basically a list of all the products on your website and all the different variables, attributes, should we say, of your product. So you'll need a product image URL, so where that image is on your website. You'll need the image name, the product name, sorry, product description, the price, availability, shipping information, lots of bits of data that Google needs to then populate those shopping ads on Google search. But then to process that, it does it through another piece of software called the Google Merchant Center. So the Google Merchant Center is another Google account, and it's free, it doesn't cost anything. So I put the URL there, but if you search for Google Merchant Center, it will come up in Google search. And the Merchant Center is a place where you connect it to your website, you tell it where this feed is, this XML feed, which you will have saved on your website somewhere. Google will pull that information through into Merchant Center, and it will tell you which products are eligible to appear on Google search and Google Shopping. Then you would go into a Google Ads account, and you would then link your ads account to the Google Merchant Center account. And then it will start pulling through your products into Google Ads, which can then be eligible to show in Google search. So the setup process, someone had said that they found it hard, and that they were trying to set it up. It can be a bit of a pain. Sometimes we set up Google Shopping accounts and they go live within a couple of hours and it just works. Sometimes it can take weeks, and it's usually because the product data is disapproved. So when you submit your product feed, Google checks it, and it takes 3 business days for Google to check it. And they will come back to you and tell you whether there's anything, any data, any product information missing, or anything that's in the incorrect format. And you then have to resubmit it again. It takes another 3 business days. And so that can drag on a bit, and it can take a while. If you're using something like Shopify, they have plugins that will create that product feed for you, and you can change the information that's sent through to Google in the back end of Shopify. If you're using other platforms, I can't really comment. If you're using WooCommerce, they have a Google Shopping plugin. The other ones, such as like BigCommerce, I don't know what everyone's using, but you'll probably find that there will be some kind of integration. The difficulty we have is when people have bespoke systems built, so it's not an off-the-peg e-commerce solution like Shopify. It's something that they've had purposely built for them. That's when we find that the integration gets more difficult and we have to get developers involved to do it. Hopefully you're using something that's relatively easy to get set up. So one thing that we kind of touched on already, we've already had a spoiler alert on this one. Anyone remember Froogle, going back to the early 2000s? Pop a Y in the chat box if you remember Froogle. No? Yes, someone does. I'm assuming those that don't remember are far too young to remember Froogle. No, lots of people don't remember. Was it an April Fool's thing? No, it was real. It was real. So the early 2000s, Froogle was essentially like Google Shopping, but it was no one paid. It wasn't advertising. It was almost another search engine for products that were being sold online, like a product search engine. It was great. And then they decided that actually we could make lots of money out of this. So they closed down Froogle and created Google Shopping ads, or product listing ads as they were called initially. So the Google Shopping is now all paid for. So everything you see on Google Shopping is a paid for link until this month. So they announced that they are rolling out free listings on Google Shopping. So it means that you don't necessarily have to have a Google Ads account set up and running. You don't need to pay to appear on Google Shopping. So this has been rolled out by today, by the end of April in the US. So in the US, they're already experiencing this. And they've promised that it will be rolled out to the rest of the world by the end of this year. And the UK is normally pretty up there in terms of priority when it rolls out new things. So I would imagine within the next probably 3 to 6 months, we're going to start seeing free listings appear in Google Shopping. There won't just be people that are advertising and paying for it. So what does this mean for you? The great thing is, it means if we just go back to this slide before, you would still need an e-commerce website and you would still need a feed in Google Merchant Center. This is what we're thinking at the moment. This is what we've been told. So you still need to get your feed set up in Google Merchant Center, but then you do not need the Google Ads at the end of it. So you would still want to get your site set up in Google Merchant Center. And this makes it eligible to show, and it tells Google exactly what products you've got in the format that they want to display them in their search results. So basically you need step 1 and step 2 to benefit from the free. Step 3 would be only if you want to pay. So as far as we're aware, the paid for side of things is going to continue. So you'll still be able to pay for it. And I would imagine you would get priority listings like you do in the normal search results. The adverts come up at the top. But yeah, it's gonna really, really change things. So one to definitely look out for. So if you're in two minds about whether you want to start paying for advertising or not, and you want to hold fire, you could do that, because free advertising is coming. Just spotted a question coming up there. Let's just check. So can you talk a bit more about setting up your website with e-commerce? So Helen, do you mean, so what platform to use? So starting to sell online, that sort of first initial step, is that kind of what you're thinking? You want to pop in the chat box, is that? Yes, brilliant. So for those of you that are new, we did have some people who were looking at setting up or had a website in development that were looking at going live soon. If you're in a situation where you're looking at setting up a brand new e-commerce website, there's lots of different options you can go down. So WordPress is possibly one of the most common platforms used for websites generally, and there are e-commerce plugins. WooCommerce is probably the most popular of those. The benefits of WordPress are that most people are familiar with it. So if you've managed a website before, you've probably seen WordPress, so it'll all be familiar to you. The only extra bit is the WooCommerce plugin, and all this is free. So the WordPress is essentially free. WooCommerce is free unless you pay for extras. So you can get set up pretty cheaply. The other options to go down are the kind of pay monthly options. So Shopify is one of those where you pay a monthly fee. However, the monthly fee includes your hosting fee as well. With WordPress, you would have to host it yourself. So you would set up a hosting account, install WordPress, install WooCommerce. But with something like Shopify, they host the website for you. The benefit of Shopify is that you are not responsible for the hosting. So if something happens to the site, they fix it for you. Well, I say they fix it. If the server goes down, it's their problem. If your server goes down with WordPress, it's your problem. So there's some security in that. Also, Shopify was built for e-commerce, whereas WordPress was not. WordPress was built as a blogging platform. So although there are plugins and add-ons, it's not necessarily built to do big e-commerce websites. There's lots of other platforms out there. There's BigCommerce, Squarespace is another pay monthly option. They have an e-commerce option, really nice, clean interface to use. And I think most of the website builders offer an e-commerce part of it too as well, like the free ones like Wix. I'm sure there's an e-commerce version you can pay for. So it's a case of finding out what works for you and what you feel comfortable maintaining as well. If you're going to be doing it yourself, that's the key thing. With something like Shopify, I think there's a free trial that they do. So if you go on the website and shopify.com, you can look at the free trial, set up a basic website. You can get a feel for whether you think you can do it or not. It might be that you need a web developer to do it, in which case you need to find someone who's a Shopify expert to help with that. The great thing is about WordPress, there's so many WordPress developers out there. There's lots of people that can help with it and lots of people using it. So if you're keen to sort of get your hands dirty and do a bit of the maintenance and the updates yourself, then WordPress might be the right option. So I hope that's helped. Those are kind of the two. WordPress and Shopify tend to be the ones that we work with. We do have some other experience of using some other ones. We do work with a client who's got a bespoke system, and the actual system's great, except if we need anything doing, we have to go to the developer to ask for it doing, and it costs. So there's upsides and downsides to each solution. So 3-month free trial on Shopify. So that's great. I thought normally it's about 7 days and you have to set up your site that quickly, but 3-month free trial. Maybe they've done that as part of the, because of the coronavirus, that they're trying to encourage more people to get online perhaps. Got a shameless plug here. Run a platform for you to make an online store. Thanks, James. There's always one. There's quite a lot of independent ones out there as well, and that might be one for you. Had a bespoke system in my business, cost us so much money, it would never go back. Yeah, I've seen this too. We worked with a client that had spent the price of a small house on a website, and it was custom made, but the problem was it was built using the programming language it was built in is one that only certain hosting companies will host, and it's really expensive. And there's only very few people that can code in this language, so trying to find people to fix it was really difficult. So although it seemed like a good idea and that it was bespoke to them, it meant they couldn't do anything with it. And actually they moved to Shopify, they moved everything to Shopify, and it was saving them probably about £300 per month just in hosting fees, because with Shopify it tends to, you have like I think you have a basic fee, correct me if I'm wrong, those that are using Shopify, but you have a basic fee and then you pay like a transaction fee for each sale. So if you're not making any money, it's a very low fee, but as soon as you start making sales, you then pay more, like a commission on each one. Yeah, so it has to be a balance. Yeah, I agree there, Hannah, actually. I think it depends on you as an individual. If you feel happy, comfortable doing it all yourself, sometimes it's quicker to get somebody else to get everything set up for you and just show you how it all works. So a couple more questions. Answered that one. So getting customers into our site, would it be a good idea to have funnels? So if we add a landing page that are focused on dog food or cat food, and then the pages we think, thinking, promoting, showcasing products, trying to capture info, then sending them directly to product pages. So I'm not quite sure what you mean there. So creating kind of a sales funnel to kind of drive them through. So adding a landing page that we're focused on dog food and cat food. So do you mean kind of upselling other products? So you kind of get them in because they're interested in a particular product line, and then kind of upselling products and pushing them through that way? Is that kind of what you're not 100% sure? I know what you mean there. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think I guess with things like pet food, from experience, you want to know that you're buying the best thing for your animal, for your pet. And I think if you land, sometimes you know what product you want to buy, so you land on that product and you're kind of looking through, but actually you might have a product that you want to sell them because maybe there's more profit margin in it, maybe you know it's a better product, maybe it's got better product reviews, and having related products and kind of comparisons on that page, that could be a good way of pushing people through to view other products. So that's another thing that we do with some of our clients, where they have like a basic range and then a premium range. So on all the basic range product pages, we have adverts for premium products as well, because we want to try and sell them something that's got more value for them, it's got more features, it's got more benefits. So that could potentially work in your market, I would imagine, Aaron. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, so Alice has just added, let's show a large enterprise with budget, stay well away from compiled language like Java and go for, yeah, interpretation like PHP. Yeah, getting a bit technical there, but PHP is generally the language that, like WordPress is built in PHP, I believe Shopify is as well. That was the issue with the client that I mentioned that had this amazing website built, cost them an absolute fortune. It was built in ASP or .NET basically, which is a Microsoft language which very little people program in, so it made it very, very expensive. So yeah. Okay. Fabulous. So just going to move on now. I think we've covered off most of the questions. Anything else, feel free to pop them in the Q&A box and I will keep jumping back to that. So next section is all about re-engaging potential customers. So we are looking at getting people back to the website and converting on the site. And it's one of the things that people don't often do. They concentrate on getting the people to the website and then they wonder why 99% of them are not buying. And I mean, your conversion rates might be different to that, but we find that conversion rates are anything between, at the lowest end, about 0.5%, at the highest end, maybe between sort of 7, 8, up to 10% conversion rate. So if you think it's actually a really good conversion rate, but that means 90% of people are not buying. So it's trying to re-engage with them and get them back to the site. So have you ever been followed around the internet by a product that you looked at once? I think most of us are familiar with this. And you look at something online and then it's just on every website, there's an advert for it wherever you go. And it's a little bit, I think when it first started happening, I think people were a bit put off by it, a bit of a privacy issue. You know, someone's obviously tracking your internet history and showing you products that you've looked at. And it's essentially something called remarketing or retargeting. And it's a way of advertising to people that have been on your site. And how it works is basically that when they visit your site, it leaves a cookie on your computer to say you've been on this website. And then when you go onto other websites, it reads that cookie and shows you adverts related to what other sites you've been on. And this remarketing or retargeting is the reason why it's basically the reason why we have cookie banners on websites that we have to agree to. It was this kind of privacy concern that people had that raised it with the it was the EU, wasn't it, that sort of imposed these cookie banner laws on us. And this is the reason why, basically. So we have to be transparent about how we're using people's data and give people the option to opt out of cookies or not use the site at all. The annoying thing about the cookie banner issue is that cookies are required. People are now scared of cookies because they think they're a bad thing. But actually cookies are required for e-commerce websites to work. It's the cookie that stores the information that's in the shopping cart, for example. So if you didn't have a cookie or the facility to add cookies on your website, if someone went to put a product in their shopping basket and then they clicked to look at another product, that product in the shopping basket would disappear. So it's a cookie that stores that information in their shopping basket and helps that checkout process. So e-commerce websites would not function without cookies. And people were okay with that. But then people started using cookies for remarketing, and then the cookie law came in. So that's kind of a potted history of cookies for you. So this is where we can actually use, as marketing people, we can actually use this to our benefit. And the benefits are, and I've put remarketing and retargeting because the two words are used interchangeably. And I think, I could be wrong, that the actual term is retargeting and it's Google's term is remarketing, but it could be the other way around. But they mean the same thing. So if you hear either of them, they mean exactly the same thing. So benefits are that you get in front of a warm audience because they've already been on your website. So they've already shown some kind of interest. They've gone to your website, they've had a look at your products, but they've left and they've not bought anything. But you know that they're interested because they've already been on your site. So they already know you, they know your brand, they know what you sell, they probably know how much it costs. So when you're advertising to them, it's a lot easier to then get them back to your site to convert them because they're already familiar with you. It's not like starting from scratch and having to introduce what you do and your brand and your values because you've already done that bit. It's a bit further down the funnel, as it were, back down the sales funnel. And we find because of that, we get higher conversion rates. So people come back, they're less convincing to buy. So conversion rates are generally higher for remarketing campaigns. And that then means that the cost per sale to us as the business is a lot lower. So as an example, we work with a client who advertises through Facebook, and we run remarketing campaigns alongside standard targeting campaigns as well. And we find that the cost per sale or cost per acquisition is about 1/3 for remarketing as it is for standard ads. So the cost benefit is quite big. So for us, it's a no-brainer. We always use remarketing, especially if we're getting quite a low conversion rate on the website, because we know that there's a good chunk of people that are not converting and we want to get them back. So, sorry, we've got a question here. I'll just stop for this. We've got lots of customers over 75 years of age and they refuse to use our web shop. Not sure how to convince them. Yeah, it's difficult. That's kind of my father's generation, and he would be the same. He hated computers and hated the internet, hated email. He just couldn't understand why people just couldn't just fax him. And yeah, I get that. I think it's just trying to make it as easy as possible. And I don't know whether it's a case of whether you can show your customers, whether you actually get to meet the customer to show them how it works, or whether you create some kind of app that you could use maybe on a tablet. I know a lot of the old generations are really big fans of tablets, iPads, because they're so much simpler than a laptop. So maybe something, yeah, would video help? Potentially. So showing them a video of how it works. It's always going to be a challenge. And I think, the sector that I used to work in, so I mentioned I worked in insurance, and the niche that I worked in was caravan insurance. So our average client was probably about 75. So most of our clientele were over the age of 60. We had customers in the hundreds. So we were really delayed on going online with our quote and buy facility, and we just thought they won't use it. And we were quite a young team. I think the average age of the company when I joined the company was 23. So we were a really young marketing team, and we just kind of thought, well, they won't be interested. But actually, when we did finally launch online quote and buy, we found that iPads were kind of the biggest device accessing our website. So if you could create something that would work really well on a tablet screen, something really, really simplified, I think that's kind of the way to go. Yeah, I can't think of anything else that you could do unless you can sit down with them and show them how easy it is to work it. Yeah, currently looking for a younger customer base. Yeah, it's a good idea. I mean, things will change. Things are changing, and I think that's going to, so much. If you think back 20 years, how much has happened. And I've been in this industry for 15 years now. So much has changed in that 15 years. It's just, yeah, things will start changing for sure. So just some of the stats on remarketing. So what I found interesting about this is when I talk to people in this kind of setting, that they get quite negative about remarketing. They don't like it. People following me around the internet. This is not what I want. But actually, in the survey by eMarketer, only 11% of consumers feel negatively about e-marketing, which actually surprised me. I thought it'd be more about half. Whether that's because they don't understand what remarketing is, I'm not too sure. I'm assuming they pre-qualified them before they answered them that question. But yeah, I was quite surprised that only 11% feel negatively. And the click-through rate 10 times higher than standard display ads. So a display ad is the banner ads you see on websites, usually run through Google Ads, but through other platforms too. So 10 times higher click-through rate, definitely worthwhile looking at. 43% more likely to convert, so it's huge. And then this one I found really interesting. 47% of people would be happy to sacrifice privacy just to get a better deal. And I think this is because businesses will do remarketing campaigns and offer some kind of incentive to get people back. So they'll advertise to people that have been on the website and kind of say, if you come back, we'll give you 5% off at checkout or something like that. So there's an incentive, and 47% of people would be happy to go along with remarketing, provided that they get a good deal from it. So I thought it was quite interesting that half of people are happy to sacrifice their privacy. So yeah, there's a lot of things working in favour of remarketing, and we find from our experience of working with clients, if they have a small budget or very, very little budget, then we will look at primarily Google Shopping backed up by remarketing on both Google and Facebook. That's kind of the bare minimum that we would do for an e-commerce client. And the reason why we almost insist on doing the remarketing is you just want to make the most of the traffic. If you're paying for traffic from Google, you want to make the most of that and get those people back to your site. So we look at the remarketing too. So, okay. No, kind offer from B there. Can help out Chris at universities. Thanks for that, B. So how it works is it's another piece of code that you have to install on your website. And this is, I mentioned the pixel with Facebook, so this is it. With Facebook, it's great. You just put one piece of code, this Facebook pixel, on your website, and that allows you to track everything from conversions right through to creating audiences from website visitors. So you would find your pixel, if you're in your Business Manager account, you find it under data sources. Now this changed quite recently. The Business Manager interface changed, and I struggled, to be honest. I was putting these slides together last week, and for the life of me could not find where the pixels had gone. They used to be under a section called Assets, and now they've moved them. So they are under a section called Data Sources at the moment, but that may change. Just seen a question pop up, so I'll just stop and have a look. So with cookies, can you offer not to decline? So just say we use cookies rather than giving the option. Yeah, I tend to do that, to be honest, because if they're functional cookies, I think you can specify functional and non-functional. Basically, if someone doesn't want cookies installed, you can actually say, then the option is to leave the website. And I've seen websites do that, and it's fine to do that. Obviously, you're losing a visitor by doing it. And I think you need to make it clear in the statement that if they do click not happy, they will leave the website and not be able to come back. There should be a way of switching off non-essential cookies. Some of the plugins already do that for you. So there's options where you can select, when you're setting it up in your kind of back-end system, you can say to disable non-essential cookies. So if you've got an e-commerce website, it will still have the cookies in there to enable a shopping cart because it needs that functionality, but it will disable things like Google Analytics tracking or Facebook pixels and things like that. So yeah, you've got the option to do both. You just cannot run cookies if someone's declined them, is the short answer to that. Okay, so any thoughts on remarketing using email lists? Yep. I'm going to cover that bit, so I will leave that on there, but I will come back to that bit, Colin. I'll definitely cover that. Can you press answer as soon as you start looking at questions? So we can... I'm not sure what you mean there. So you can't see the questions, is that right? So if I click on here, can you not see Colin's question? Aaron's question. I'm not sure I know what you mean there, Jim. Okay, got a lot of questions coming through now. So some shopping carts will work without cookies. Okay. Does ICO insist on a button to enable rejection of cookies? Quite possibly, yes. But to reject all cookies would mean that your website wouldn't function. So from that point of view, it'd be worth just saying that you'd have to leave the website because the website wouldn't work for them. Okay. So, right, we're going to go back. I'm just going to go back here and we'll come back to questions in a second. So Facebook, call this their pixel, and then under Google Ads, you've also got audiences. So you can create remarketing audiences in Google Ads as well. You can also create them in Twitter. You can also use audiences in Google Ads to target people on YouTube. There's also third-party remarketing companies. There's one called AdRoll. There's quite a few companies that are set up to basically provide remarketing services, but they run outside of any of the mainstream, outside of Google or Facebook or any other advertising platforms. So once you've got your code installed on your website, you can then start to build audiences. One other thing to mention as well, with Google, you can actually create, rather than doing it through Google Ads, you can do it in Google Analytics as well. So if you've got Google Analytics on your website, you can create audiences in there, which you can then import into Google Ads or Google Shopping. And it would be in Analytics, it's under, from memory, it's under admin, and then there's a property column, which is the middle column. So when you go into your admin section in Analytics, the middle column, and there's a section called audience definitions, and within there you can set up remarketing audiences as well. So there's a few different ways of doing it. Once you've set this up, the setup, so you don't have to keep doing this each time, so it's a bit of a faff, but once you've done it, it's worth it. So how you can use these, you can create custom audiences. They, depending on the platform, sometimes they're given different names. So Twitter call them tailored audiences, but with Facebook and Google, I think, call them custom audiences, or Google, they're just called audiences. So you could create an audience based on all website traffic. So everybody who visits your website gets put into one audience and you can market to them. It's okay, except you can't really target individual people based on what they're interested in or what products they've looked at. So you can then be more specific and you can create audiences based on pages that people have looked at on your website or products that they've looked at. And you can also create audiences based on pages that they've looked at, but then ones that they've not looked at. So for an example of using that would be, you could target people who have looked at your checkout page, but then they've not looked at the payment completed page. So you know that they've put something in their shopping basket, but then they've not checked out. So they're kind of abandoned cart users. So you can create audiences based on that. And we do that quite a bit as well. So we'll have like an added to cart remarketing list where we know people have added a product into their shopping cart, but they're not checked out. And then we can display different messages to them. And it's a bit more tailored. And based on products that they've viewed, so you can create dynamic remarketing. So dynamic basically means it creates the ad dynamically based on what they've looked at on your website. And these are great because it means less intervention from you. So for example, with Facebook, you could run, you could upload your product catalog to Facebook, run dynamic remarketing campaign, and it would automatically know which product they'd looked at on your website and show them adverts for that product. So that's how people do it, where you see that specific product you've looked at follows you around. They're using dynamic remarketing. And then we can also use this to create what we call lookalike or similar audiences. So different terminology, but means the same thing. So lookalike in Facebook, similar audiences in Google. And these are a way of creating a bigger audience. So if you've only got a small amount of traffic coming to your website, which is quite often the case if it's brand new, your audience size will be really, really small. So you need to be getting your audience size up into sort of 4 figures to get some to get a decent size of audience to market to. And one way of kind of accelerating that is to create a lookalike audience. And this will tell Google or Facebook, whatever platform you're using, to look at the characteristics of your custom audience and then match other users with the same characteristics to create a lookalike audience. So as an example, we worked with a race course and we took their website visitors, we also used their email addresses, which I'm going to come to, and we created a custom audience. And this is obviously people that have been on their website, so they were interested in horse racing. We then said to Facebook, now create as a lookalike audience based on this custom audience. So your lookalike audience is always based on a custom audience that you've created. And then, so Facebook then looks at our custom audiences, builds up a bit of a picture, almost like a buyer persona of who is on that list. And then they find similar people on Facebook and they create a lookalike audience. And what we found was if we had a custom audience of maybe 2,000, that the lookalike audience would be 100,000 people, that they could really find a lot more than we could give them through the website traffic. So that's really worthwhile looking at. In terms of where you can run ads, so we've talked a lot about Facebook. Remarketing will run on Instagram as well. I swear there's about 100 different placements you can have on Facebook. So I've just put 3: newsfeed, in stories, in Messenger. Pretty much any Facebook entity you can put an advert out on there. There are different criteria in terms of running adverts, in terms of creatives and things like that. I don't want to get too much into that today. I want to kind of focus on the online sales side of things. But through Facebook as well, you can place those ads on Instagram, again, the newsfeed, in stories, on Google. With Google, you can advertise not just on the display network, which is the banner ads you see that follow you around, but you can also advertise in Gmail. So if you use Gmail, you get those 2 promoted ads at the top of your inbox. You can do that through Google Ads. You can advertise on YouTube as well. So that can be done either through a video campaign where you're using a video as your advert, or it can be done where you get the little banner coming up at the bottom of the video campaign. So that's run through the display network, and they go up on YouTube. And you can display within apps as well. So the adverts you get in free apps on your phone, you can run ads there. With Twitter, you can do it. I don't talk much about Twitter, and that's not because it's not a good platform. There are still people using it, depends on your audience. And I still think that there are certain sectors that utilize Twitter a lot, but a lot of e-commerce are not finding Twitter that is working for them as well. We found it with our clients, it's not really worked as well as Facebook, but it was relatively cheap to advertise. But you can run remarketing through Twitter as well. And as I say, they call them tailored audiences, so different terminology, but the same thing. And you can run them through newsfeed, and also in the who to follow section, you can promote your Twitter account on there. So let's go back to some questions. So any thoughts on remarketing? Yeah, email, sorry, I'm going to come back to that one. What's the display network? Really good question. So with Google, they have what they call the search network and the display network. So the search network is Google search results and other search engines that utilize Google search. So some search engines are powered by Google in the back end. So they don't have their own search engine as such. So I think AOL search engine used to be powered by Google. So they would be classed as part of the search network. And then on the other side of it, we've got display network. So this is a huge network of third-party websites. So it could be anyone can set up a website and be part of Google's display network through their program called AdSense. And these are third-party websites, blogs that have said to Google, I want to display your adverts on my website. And in return, they get a cut of the the fee. So every time someone clicks on their ad, they get a few pence into their bank account. So the display network is this huge network of third-party websites where you can display banners and video ads. So it tends to be static images and video ads. Some of them do text ads as well. Display advertising, so advertising through the display network is great for remarketing because it's quite visual. And it also works quite well if you're looking for more of a brand awareness campaign. For driving direct sales, generally, it's not that great, but for remarketing, it works really well. So I hope that's answered that one. So, okay, so I'll leave them there. I'm not sure what the issue was with the Q&A thing, so I'm just kind of leaving that like that for a second, make sure everyone's got those. I will minimize that. Okay. So lastly, what I want to look at is re-engaging old customers. So this is where it's going to get a little bit more GDPR, shall we say. So this is about using customer data. So really important that we have to think about GDPR in this. And as I mentioned before, I'm not a data protection expert. This is not something that I can give advice on. However, we all know that we need to get consent before we can use customers' data. So there's a couple of links here. I will just to help you out if you're wanting to have a quick look at these. So Google and Facebook have their own kind of GDPR guidelines. I'm just going to post those into the chat box. So there's two links that you can hopefully copy and paste those, so you don't have to write them down or anything. And it is, what's interesting about GDPR, and I think a lot of companies were quite surprised at how their data that they'd collected over the years was not compliant. But the scary thing was it was never compliant. I think people weren't aware of the sort of privacy of electronic communications regulations, the PECR, which came into force in 2003, which required, especially B2C, businesses to get consent before using email addresses. And yeah, that's been the case since 2003. And I think that's one of the misconceptions of GDPR is that suddenly we've now got to get consent. Well, actually, we've always had to get consent. GDPR has just made that consent a bit more strict. And GDPR is more about protecting customer data. So it's more about how you store that data and keeping records. So there's a little bit more of that emphasis in GDPR. But the grey area, and one which, to be honest, that I have read so much about and I still get confused, is what kind of consent you need to get before using data for remarketing purposes. So that's kind of what we're going to look at today. So you can use your customer data to create a remarketing list a remarketing audience to advertise to. So if you've got a database of email addresses, you can take that database, upload it into Facebook. It is uploaded securely, so the data is what they call hashed, so you can't decipher it. And then Facebook or Google or Twitter will take that information, they'll take those email addresses and will match them up with Facebook accounts or Google accounts or Twitter accounts. And whichever ones it matches up, it then puts into an audience, and this is your kind of customer list. So then you can use that to then advertise to. So for getting people back to your website who've bought from you in the past, you've got their data, it's a really good way to do that. This is where GDPR kind of comes in, because obviously you've got consent, or hopefully you've requested consent from the customer to use their email address. But quite often you maybe have just put that you're just going to use it for email campaigns, so email marketing, whereas remarketing is a whole new thing. So really we need to get consent for that as well. And we need to have something within our privacy policy on our website to say how we use that, so how we're going to use their data. I've seen this done in different ways, and to be honest, I'm not too sure which is correct. But I've seen people do it where they will have several tick boxes when people sign up or people purchase something, and there'll be an option for remarketing and an option for email lists. The danger of that is I don't think people understand what they're opting into with the remarketing. I think it's quite difficult to explain that to a consumer. The other way of doing it is to obviously have a link to your privacy policy so people can see how you're going to use their data. But to have one tick box for both, the danger of having just one tick box for both email marketing and remarketing is that they opt out of both, whereas they might have been happy to receive emails, in which case you've just lost a potential email address from that. So my recommendation would be to have separate tick boxes. So you have like an email marketing list, so happy to receive emails, and then happy to receive remarketing. You have two separate lists for it, and it's the remarketing one you use to advertise to. You can also use this to actually suppress email addresses. So if you wanted to, if you knew you've got a list of people that are unsubscribed and have definitely said they don't want to hear from you again, you could upload that to potentially exclude them. But then this opens up this whole grey area of should you be uploading that data in the first place if they've asked you not to use their data. So this is where it gets confusing, and this is where no matter how much I read, I just get more confused as to what's right and what's wrong. So Facebook and Google, those two links there, talk you through their stance on it and how they deal with it. So use their guidelines for each platform and seek advice from a data protection expert as well to make sure that you're doing it right. So what you can also do, similar with the standard remarketing audiences from your website traffic, you can create lookalike or similar audiences from those. This is a really good idea. If you've got a really good sized customer database, uploading that into Google and saying now find more people like these to create a lookalike audience, you can vastly increase the size of your marketing audience and who your adverts are going out to. So this brings us quite nice. So the GDPR thing, it's kind of one of them things that you don't really want to bring up. It's that four-letter word of marketing, no one wants to talk about it. But it's something we need to be thinking about as well, because I think one thing that GDPR did do, apart from upset a lot of businesses and organisations, was make the consumer more aware of their rights, which I think is a good thing. But it also means that as businesses, we can't get away with doing anything, which a lot of businesses were doing before. So we just need to be mindful of that. And that kind of comes into the next section we want to look at, which is email marketing. And email marketing is not dead. And I know a lot of people have stopped doing it since GDPR came in, and some of them quite rightly so, because the databases were not opted in or they had no evidence of that. But for the clients that we're working with that are, actively opting in new customers and sending emails regularly, it's still working. And there was something I was trying to find. Someone put something on LinkedIn the other day about that the open rates of emails had gone up since lockdown. People got more time to read emails. People are flicking through their inbox, catching up with things they wouldn't necessarily open and look at. So now could potentially be a really good time to start doing some more email marketing. So this starts from ironically social media today. That consumers who receive marketing emails spend 83% more than those that don't. And I think most of us on the call today would want to increase our revenue by 83%. I mean, that would be a really nice thing to do. And the reason why email works so well compared to something like social media, and social media is great, but quite often it's not very targeted. So with email, you're sending it to the inbox of someone who's given you their email address. So they're expecting it. They know who you are. It's gone into someone who's interested in your product or service, and you can control that relationship. With social media, you put something out on Facebook and anyone can read it. It's not necessarily going to people that would buy from you. It's a bit more of a kind of brand awareness scattergun approach, whereas email marketing is much more focused. You can segment lists, so you can send tailored emails out to people based on what they've bought in the past. It's less time consuming than social. You can create one email campaign. You might do a weekly campaign. With social media, you really need to be doing something every day and getting content out there constantly. With emails, that would just irritate people. So getting something out once a week, it's a lot less time intensive. And it's pretty cheap, or even free. So there are free platforms out there to use. So it makes it a bit of a no-brainer. And I think it needs to be part of the marketing mix. I don't think you can say social media is better than email marketing or email marketing is better than social media. They're two different tools and we need them both. Social media is great further up the sales funnel when people are just browsing, just having a look around, not quite sure what they want yet. Whereas email marketing is great for people who know what they want and they're interested, for pushing them through to that sale. So they both have the place. So what you could use email marketing for: you could email people who abandon their cart. So you have the ability with some of these platforms like Shopify to create automatic emails that go out to people that have abandoned their shopping cart. So it sends them a reminder of what's in there for them to come back and purchase. So that's a good idea for e-commerce sites. And yeah, Jim agrees that really works. We found the conversion rates, it's somewhat double the conversion rates with one of our clients. We found really surprising. It's just getting people to come back again. And people leave your site for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it's just that they're distracted and they forgot what they were doing, or they got called away, or like me, they've got 19 tabs open at any one time and they're trying to multitask on it. And quite often at the end of the day, they just close them all and forget where they were. So having that email reminder direct into their inbox just jogs the memory. It's good for re-engaging with old customers who haven't bought in a while. So maybe you've got a database of customers that maybe they used to purchase from you regularly, but they haven't done for a while. Now's a really good time to get back in touch with them. Maybe introduce a bit of an incentive for them to come back. Also for loyal customers, so customers that buy from you regularly, keep in touch with them. It's trying to get them to come back, maybe cross-sell other products that you sell. So if they bought one particular product, maybe make them aware of another product range that could complement what they've already bought. So being really targeted with it. So it's endless really with email marketing. And I think there's so much we could do, like recommend a friend campaigns. We used to use that a lot. So if you've got a customer that's just purchased from you, maybe a week after they've made a purchase, send them an email saying, hope you've had an amazing experience. Maybe ask them to leave you a review. And if they're really happy, forward this email to a friend and get £10 off your next order. Something really simple like that. It's a really good way of reaching new people. So one example of a good email campaign that I received, I say recently, I actually tried to dig it out of my inbox and it was probably about 4 years ago, so not that recently. So I'm a runner and I like a certain type of running shoe, and I probably purchased them, I think my husband would probably disagree, I'd say once every 3 years, but he'd probably say once every 3 months. And I generally buy them from the same shop online. It's a really small independent one-man band that runs it. Service is really great. You get a little free bag of Haribo sweets when they arrive. You're just made to feel like a really valued customer, and I always buy them from there. And he's really good at his marketing campaigns, and he'd sent me an email. I liked the way that he'd really personalised this. So I don't mean personalised it by calling me by my name or anything like that. He'd actually put the make of shoe that I buy, so my Vibram 5 Fingers, and he'd put what size I am. So he knew that I'd bought that product in that size. So he sent me this tailored email that said, you've bought these from us in the past, hope you like them, we've got an offer on for you at the moment. With some examples of the shoes that they were selling. I think if I was going to do this, I'd put some product images in there, but apart from that, it was a good email message. And the button to say 15%. When I clicked through the button, it took me to his website, which was, it'd already been pre-filtered. So it'd been pre-filtered by brand and by size. So as soon as I clicked through, every product on that page was something that I could buy and would fit. And I did buy some shoes from this campaign, which is why I liked it and I saved it, because I thought, that's a really good idea. It's just saved me so much time of having to filter, find products that I want, filter by brand, and then you find the ones that you want and they're not in your size. And so it just did all that work for me, and it just made it so much easier. So it's just being able to do this. Now he uses MailChimp for this. This is a MailChimp campaign, and I'm not sure what system he uses for his e-commerce platform, but MailChimp is good in that it generally integrates with most e-commerce. So it will pull through that data of what they've purchased, so then you can use it in your email campaigns. So it's a bit more complicated to set up, but it's so much worthwhile, and the conversion rates will just go through the roof from doing things like this. So Jim was asked, would this be acceptable in these days if the sale was done GDPR? Yeah, I think it depends on how it was done pre-GDPR. If you've got evidence that they have opted in, then yes, it's fine. I think what companies did, which was a little bit wrong, was they tried to get people to re-opt in at the point of GDPR. Whereas actually that data had already been opted in. I was asked to opt into email lists that I'd already opted into quite freely, but they got a bit kind of worried about keeping people on their list. So they're asking people to re-opt in, but that wasn't actually necessary with GDPR. As long as you collected that data in a compliant way in the first place, then it was actually okay to keep using it. You would need to be thinking about, with GDPR, there's something within that about the timescales in which you keep the data. And someone that I spoke to who was running a GDPR workshop said that it depends on who you speak to, but he suggested 12 months. So if it was longer than 12 months, you technically shouldn't have the data on file. That might be different depending on what you sell, because you might need that data for other purposes. So you might keep that data on file, but for marketing purposes, he suggested that every 12 months people should opt in again. So it depends on who you speak to, but it would be worth doing a bit more research in terms of the GDPR implications on that. So to use this on a larger scale, so this is auto-generated. So he hasn't done this manually. So I should have said that. So what he has done here is used what we call merge fields. So if you've ever done a mail merge in Word, for example, where you've created mailing labels or letterhead, letters with names and addresses on, and you've got a spreadsheet of names, address line 1, address line 2, postcode, and you create merge fields in your Word document and you merge those in. It works in the same way. So when you send through your data from your e-commerce platform to MailChimp, you'll have a column for each piece of data, and each column can then become a merge field. So you can merge in the first name, you can merge in product purchase, merge in shoe size, merge in date of purchase. So any data that you pull through into MailChimp can then be auto-merged into the campaign. So you would create one email and you would just put these little tags in, so like a first name tag, a product name tag, and then MailChimp would pull in the data for each record. So it would do it automatically. So yeah, good question. It's not a manual job, don't worry. You wouldn't have to do this thousands of times. So yeah. Okay. So a couple of email marketing tips. We could do a full day on email marketing, but I won't because we've got about 20 minutes left. So pick your software. I've talked about MailChimp. It's probably one of the most common ones that people use. It's great. We found that there were some big changes made about 12 months ago, and some of our clients have struggled with the changes, that it restricts your audiences and your lists that you can create. And we found that some of our clients now were moving into one called MailerLite. So just as another option for you, have a look at both. MailChimp are very much investing in other areas, so now you can have a MailChimp website, and they're very much investing in other bits of their software at the moment. MailerLite's really simple. Pricing is similar. They both have a free option. So with MailChimp, it's free up to 2,000. With MailerLite, it's free up to 1,000. But then the monthly fees are quite similar after that. It's not a huge amount. There's a recent change where you can't schedule times. It's annoying unless you, so if you want to schedule an email to go out in the future, which most of us do, because we don't want it to go out then and there, you need a paid account to do that. Thoughts on Klaviyo, Expedia. So I've not come across Expedia before. Klaviyo I have used with one of our clients, Shopify clients. I really liked the platform. It was a bit of a learning curve after using MailChimp, but Klaviyo was great in that the integrations with Shopify worked really well. The client did end up moving away from Klaviyo, mainly due to the cost. As their database grew, the cost got a bit too much for them. And I get the impression it's a lot of smaller company. So there were some odd things about the software, like they couldn't add a new user without emailing someone, and then someone at Klaviyo had to manually add me as a separate user, whereas in MailChimp you would just manage users yourself within your account settings. So there were some really odd things about Klaviyo, but it just made me feel that it was a smaller company. But actually the actual system seemed to work really well for us, and you could segment. So we looked at Klaviyo versus MailChimp for Shopify, and we didn't use MailChimp because of the segmenting options. That MailChimp was more limited. We could only segment people by, it was something like product category, whereas with Klaviyo we could segment them by individual product, which is what we wanted. Yeah, so we found Klaviyo better for Shopify than MailChimp, but it is more expensive. Yeah. ActiveCampaign, I've not used that one either. But yeah, the only thing to bear in mind if you're new and you've not started using any email software is to check their integration. So when you go on the website, there'll be an area on the site, might be under features, but it might be called integrations, and it'll list all the platforms that it will integrate with. So you want to make sure that it integrates with your e-commerce platform, whichever one that is. Because if it doesn't, then it's going to be really, really difficult. There are third-party tools that sit between them, like Zapier, where they sit in between the email software and your e-commerce software, but it adds another layer of complexity to it. So I would opt for something that integrates out of the box. Are there any free without a customer limit? Not that I'm aware of. No, I don't think so. And Colin's posted a YouTube video of comparing. Yeah, there's so many out there, and sometimes it's a case of you've just got to find the one that you can work with. The client that we've just moved to, we moved to MailerLite well, last week, and this week moving all their lists over from MailChimp to MailerLite. They have a VA that works with them, and she was struggling with MailChimp. It just wasn't logical. It just didn't sit with her, and although I've used it for a long time, so it's kind of normal to me. You kind of put up with the quirks of it. I started looking at MailerLite and thought, actually, this is a lot more intuitive, and set her up with a free account so she could have a play about with it, and she loves it. She's done more on it in a couple of weeks than what I've done with it. She's taken to it. So MailerLite is one that I'm kind of now recommending to some people as well that don't get on with MailChimp. So I'm just going to go to the Q&A, see what we've got going on here. So yeah, any thoughts on remarketing using email lists? I think we've covered that now. What is the display network? Yeah, we've covered that. Any free email platforms? So yeah, MailChimp, MailerLite, free to get started, free to set them up, and free up to a point. So MailChimp up to 2,000, MailerLite up to 1,000. And I think, I'm just trying to think of the restrictions. So there used to be restrictions on the free accounts, and I think they've opened up quite a lot of that now on most of them. So you still get quite a lot of the features on the free account. But they're relatively cheap. So once you get beyond that, you're paying maybe $10 a month to start with, then it goes up to $15, $20. It's not that expensive compared to some of the other platforms. So with MailChimp, is there any way to email non-subscribes, maybe to rejoin or surveys? But looking Google, can't find anything. So people that have, if you mean people that have unsubscribed and trying to get back in touch with them again, I mean, technically you can if they've unsubscribed. The only way you could get back in touch with them would be if it's through the course of doing business as such. So it's not a marketing communication, including a survey. So emails sent out via MailChimp end up going to promotion inbox. Yeah, this is the downside to it. I mean, it's good that they're going to the promotion inbox on Gmail and not in the junk. That's a good thing, that you're avoiding that junk folder. But to be honest, it's the content. So it's not necessarily the fact that it's coming from MailChimp, it's the content of the email. So it's assuming that it's a promotion. Well, that's what Google say. I'm kind of under the impression as well that it does look at who it's coming from, and that if it's come from MailChimp or an email marketing software company, it does seem to go more in promotions. So one thing that we've tried when we've struggled with things like open rates, because that's sometimes a bit of a key that they're not getting into the inbox if the open rates are low, is doing it in a plain text format. So you can do that in MailChimp. So rather than using a nice HTML, lots of graphics and logos and images, every now and again do the odd email campaign that's plain text. So it looks like it's just come from a regular Outlook inbox, and see if your open rate improves. And that kind of can give you an idea as to whether things aren't getting through or not. We found open rates and actually engagement rates are quite often higher with a text-only email. So answered Aaron's. And we moved our website, and there are contacts that say cleaned and can't seem to email them. So I'm assuming this is in MailChimp, because if you export your, I'm not sure whether you mean MailChimp or just generally. So I was doing some work in MailChimp this week, and when we were downloading so when you download, if you export your contacts in MailChimp, it cleans them, and it won't let you email those. It'll basically pull off a list of subscribed, a list of unsubscribed, and a list of cleaned. And it won't let you email the cleaned or the unsubscribed. So the subscribed are the ones that you're left with, basically. So the cleaned means they've just been removed for some reason. I thought they were removing them because they were unsubscribed, but there was a separate section for that. So it could be that they're duplicates. It could be that, yeah, that's a good question, actually, because I just assumed it's because they're unsubscribed, but I have the same thing, that if it's labelled as subscribed, you can email them, but the cleaned ones are ones that MailChimp are deleting. Sometimes it does it if they're generic email addresses like info@, it doesn't like them. So every now and again, it'll just take them out of your emails. So it could be that reason. And what do you consider to be good open rates? Ooh, good one. This is a bit of it depends answer to everything. It depends on your industry and what you're selling and your database, how old it is, things like that. So for example, we would expect, if your list is data that you've collected, so from your customers, we would expect open rates between 25 to 35% would be about average. We find that goes up if we do plain text. We sometimes find that goes up to about maybe 40, 45%, but it does vary. And it also varies. Some people, if you buy email data in, so it's a cold list, obviously GDPR compliant data that you bought in, you'll find that open rates might be as low as between 5 and 10%. It might be really low. If you've got a really small database of really loyal customers, it might be 70, 80%. So it does vary, but we tend to go for about 25 to 35%. There is actually on MailChimp, if you Google MailChimp benchmarks or something like that, it will show you the open rates and the click-through rates broken down by different industries and give you a benchmark for each. So that's quite useful. Okay, any suggestions on best email marketing CRM combination? CRM's not really my area, to be honest. So no. So Pipedrive, MailChimp, which I like, but they don't integrate directly. Yeah, so you have to have a third-party tool that sits in between. No, I mean I would assume that you would Shopify or the e-commerce not provide some kind of CRM? Yeah, PySync. So there are solutions out there. It's find the one that works for you. I think everyone's business will be different. But CRM isn't my area of expertise on that, so sorry about that. Okay, I'm just conscious of time, so I'm just going to move on to. Okay, so let's just run through this. So email marketing tips. Pick your software, make sure it integrates, create subject lines that get people to open your email. So trying to create some kind of suspense, some kind of intrigue that makes them want to click and open it. You can personalize the subject line as well. Asking questions in the subject line, that can often increase open rates. Personalizing the actual email, which we've looked at in the previous example. So just one thing to be aware of with subject lines is something called a spam trigger word. So a spam trigger word is something like the word free or discount or Viagra or something spammy will trigger the spam filter on your recipients' inboxes. So being aware of those, you don't have to avoid them completely, but just be aware that that could be one of the reasons if you get a low open rate that you're using too many kind of spam trigger words. And there's a HubSpot article on that. If you Google spam trigger words, it will come up in Google, and there's hundreds of them. But it might just give you some insight if you're getting low open rates, why they're going into a junk folder. Okay, so the last section that I want to look at. So something else about deliverability issues, sending BT internet emails. I'm not too sure about that one. Let's move on to our last section about tracking, and then we can hopefully finish on time for 12. So you'll notice a pattern if you come on any of my webinars, any of my training. I'm always telling you to track everything because how do we know what's working if we don't track it? So Google Analytics, free tool. Most people are using it. Some of you might not be using it yet, but I would recommend if you are having your website built currently, get it installed, get the tracking code installed. If you're using Shopify, WooCommerce, there's plugins that you can use to install the code for you, or you can do it manually or get a developer to do it manually. It will help you track traffic to your online shop, where that traffic's coming from and which converts better, and then tracking sales and revenue as well. So you can, the standard Google Analytics out of the box won't give you all this information. It will tell you where your traffic's coming from, but for you to be able to track e-commerce elements, such as the revenue generated, number of transactions, you need to set up e-commerce tracking, and this will vary depending on what platform you're using. So to start with, you would need to set up within Google Analytics itself. So go to your Google Analytics account, and then in the bottom left corner, go to your admin section, which is like a little cog in the bottom left. And then in the view menu, which is the right-hand menu, there's e-commerce settings where you can enable the e-commerce. So if I just show you on a screenshot there, so bottom left is a little admin icon, and then over on the right-hand side in the view column, sixth option down, e-commerce settings, and then from there it will allow you to enable e-commerce. So the minimum you need is the top one, enable e-commerce. If you want more advanced and it to drill down deeper into the products and things like that you're selling, click on the enhanced one as well, and that will give you more data. And that's it. Once you've done that, you save that, and then you need to set it up on your website. So I was looking, let me get something up here a second. So I was looking at this on Shopify and WooCommerce. To be honest, normally this is something a web developer does for us. So we just say, can you set this up? Set up e-commerce tracking, and like magic, it gets done. But I thought it'd be useful actually if you wanted to have a look at it. So I'm just going to put into the chat box 2 links, one for Shopify and one for WooCommerce, which tell you how to go about integrating Google Analytics. And they talk you through the e-commerce tracking setup as well. So once you've done that, the great thing about something like Shopify is that you don't need to do any coding, I don't think. I think it's a case of you set it up within Shopify, link it to your analytics, switch it on in analytics, and then it just starts pulling through automatically. WooCommerce is quite similar, I believe, so there's a couple of links there to help you out. So once you've got your e-commerce tracking set up, you can track things like this. So the funnel process as people go through your website, the sessions on your site where no shopping activity occurs, and then those where someone added it to a basket, those where people abandon the basket, those checkout abandonments. You can track all this through Google Analytics. And I think one of the things that we like to look at, or most of our clients want to see, is what channels are actually generating the income, where are the sales actually coming from. So this is in acquisition and then channels and the overview report. So acquisition, channels, overview, and it will show you your channel groupings down the left. So for this account, we've got, it might look different depending on what marketing you're doing, but we've got organic search, social, direct, paid search, email, referrals, display. And then on the right-hand side, we've got our conversion data. So we've got e-commerce conversion rate, So 1.5% of people convert, and then it's broken down by different channels. So we can see from this that actually referrals, email campaigns and paid search are better at converting than other channels, that their conversion rate is a lot higher compared to social media, where our conversion rate is a lot lower. And we'd kind of expect that, because it's kind of further up the sales funnel, and we'd expect email to be higher. This is one of the reasons why we recommend people stick with their email marketing, because the conversion rates can speak for themselves. And then we can actually see the number of transactions and then the revenue generated. So these are the numbers that as a business owner you want to be looking at. How much money have you generated from those channels? And this is the bit that I get really excited about, because this is the money bit, isn't it? This is what clients want to see. This is what you want to see. So it's making sure once you've got that set up, all this data is there available so you can actually track it. And you'll see with this account, you might think, well, you know, we only did £1,000 through social, well, let's not do social anymore. But actually those social campaigns might have contributed to the paid search campaigns, they might have contributed to an email campaign. So for us, there has to be that kind of multi-channel approach, so lots of different channels all feeding into the same pot. So just finally, this is really hard to do, because due to what we do with clients, we generally move them away from using third-party tools and third-party sellers such as Amazon, eBay, Etsy, not on the high street, because of the commission that they charge, because of the restrictions they place on it, because Amazon, eBay, they can just shut down your shop really quickly for no reason. And for a lot of the people that we work with come to us because they want to move away from it. So it seems really contradictory for me to even recommend this, but just looking at the way things are going at the moment with the current situation, that everyone's online, everyone's buying online, and it's no secret that Amazon are making a mint out of this, that they're apparently recruiting another 100,000 members of staff. Everybody knows that Amazon is still delivering, the vans are still out delivering goods. So people are buying through Amazon more than they ever have. And I think that if you've got a product that you can potentially sell on Amazon, it needs to be there. Obviously, you still need your own website, because I think that's where it's at. And I think when you sell through Amazon, you kind of want something in that parcel that prompts them to come back to you direct, so you get to keep the commission on it. But yeah, I think they're almost unnecessarily evil at the moment, and it might be a temporary thing. So if you're in a situation where you've got a product you could sell on eBay or on Amazon, and your website hasn't been built yet, or it's in development, or you're thinking about it, you could get set up on Amazon as a business seller quite quickly and get your products out there and get generating some income in quite quickly while your website's building up and while you're getting everything, all your advertising stuff set up on your own website, and then maybe pull back on Amazon when you get more established. So I felt I should just put it in there, but again, we don't help clients with this because generally we're getting them to do the opposite. But I just felt that it was worth mentioning, that it might be relevant for some of you guys. I think, yeah, eBay and Amazon are probably the two biggest ones. And there are, depending on what you sell, Etsy, not on the high street, or a couple of others. And there's probably other ones as well. But I think that just the huge giants, I mean, everyone's got the app on the phone. They just go to it, buy from it, and don't really think. It's a shame, and everyone should be buying from independent shops, and we'd all love to, but we've all got a Prime account, and it's just easier to do it through the big names. So yeah, one to consider. So to summarise what we've been through today, we've gone through reviewing and optimising your content. So looking at your images, looking at your product descriptions, looking at your peripheral pages like your data protection statements, your privacy policies, your returns policies. And then looking at new channels to drive traffic. So looking at maybe different social channels, looking at Google Shopping, definitely look at Google Shopping. Re-engage with potential customers, so using remarketing, getting back in front of people that have been on your website but then have not bought anything. And then re-engaging with old customers. So looking at using customer data to then create audiences for social advertising, create audiences for Google advertising, but also your email marketing as well, let's not forget that. And then finally, just to track everything. So then you know what's working, what's not, you know where your budget could be better spent. But also you could, it's not just where your budget could be better spent, because I don't think pulling back budget's always a good idea. It might just be that your marketing needs maybe a review. So if you're finding that Facebook's not generating as much as Instagram, for example, or vice versa, maybe you need to change your messaging. Maybe it's your adverts that are not working rather than the platform. But if we don't track it, we don't know. So track everything, and then we can improve on that. So any final questions? I know we've covered a lot, and there's been quite a lot of questions. I hope I've covered off most of them, but is there anything else that people want to ask about this? No, everyone's gone quiet. I'm assuming that's a good thing. Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Right, Heather, thank you for this. And just before all of the attendees go, I just want to let them know that our next webinar is taking place on Monday next week, and it will be on LinkedIn Masterclass session on profile excellence and how to make a great first impression. So if if anyone of you enjoyed today's session, which was really useful and informative, please feel free to join us on Monday. The booking link will be sent in the follow-up email to all of you who attended, and there will be a post-webinar survey that we would be really grateful if you could complete it, because the feedback that we receive is very, very useful for us. Yes, we do have one more question for you, Heather. Yes, the copy of the presentation. We won't be able to send the copy of the presentation, but the webinar that we've recorded today, this session, it will be sent out to all of you in the email as well, so you can rewatch the webinar if you like it.